Welcome back everybody, my name is Tucker. Quick note before the video starts, this might look familiar to some of you. I have posted this video on my channel previously a few months ago, but it recently got taken down for some copyright issues, so I re-edited it to make sure that this isn't a problem and reposted it. This is one of my favorite videos I've ever done, so I really wanted to make sure it was out there for you guys to see. Having said that, enjoy the video. In what may be a bit of a shocker to those of you that haven't watched any of my live streams, I am not, unlike seemingly all NBA YouTubers, a Knicks, Bulls, Lakers, or Celtics fan. I am in fact a Brooklyn Nets fan. Well, actually at the time that I started following the NBA, they were the New Jersey Nets. How I got to be a Nets fan growing up in North Carolina is a story for another day, but the short version is I loved so many players on those teams in the 2000s. Whether it be Jason Kidd or Richard Jefferson or Kenyon Martin, or later on, one of my favorite players of all time, Vince Carter, the Nets are my team because of those guys. And as a Nets fan, things haven't been great the past few years. As the franchise attempts to climb its way out of the hole, former GM Billy King dug for it. A man who, yes, did bring a small blip of prosperity to the organization, but did so at a huge, huge cost. Back in the summer of 2010, things weren't great for the at the time New Jersey Nets either. They were coming off one of the worst seasons in NBA history, finishing with a 12-70 record, and setting a new NBA record for consecutive losses to begin a regular season with 18. Yes, it took the Nets until the beginning of December to record their first win that year. But even with that said, there was a good amount of hope on the horizon. The sale of the team to Russian billionaire Mikhail Prokhorov had just gone through in May, and he was the richest owner in the league. With minority owner Jay-Z at his side, and the process of moving the team to the brand new Barclays Center in Brooklyn expedited by bringing in Prokhorov, they looked to be legit contenders to sign one of the many high-profile free agents available that summer, including LeBron James, Chris Bosh, Dwayne Wade, and Joe Johnson, among others. But they didn't end up with any of those guys. Instead, and I can specifically remember this as the moment I realized I might have chosen the wrong team to be a fan of, they handed out contracts totaling $49 million to Jordan Farmar, Travis Outlaw, and Johan Petro. If you have no idea who any of those guys are, I don't blame you. Farmar is the most recognizable, but he bounced around the league and was last seen in a 2-game stint with the Kings in 2016. Outlaw was waived via the amnesty provision just a year later and never averaged more than 6 points per game for the remaining 3 years of his career with the Kings, and Petro averaged less than 4 points and 4 rebounds per game in his 2 seasons with the Nets before being traded to the Hawks. That free agency class was the start of the Billy King era, who was hired as GM that summer. And maybe we as fans should have known at this moment that this guy wasn't the right man for the job. Along with those guys, the only other notable addition to the team from that summer of 2010 that once provided so much hope to fans was the drafting of Derrick Favors with the 3rd overall pick. Selected ahead of the combined 10 All-Star appearances and 6 All-NBA selections of DeMarcus Cousins with the 5th pick, Gordon Hayward with the 9th pick, and Paul George with the 10th pick. At this point in the story, it's important to understand something about the climate surrounding the franchise as it prepared for its move to Brooklyn. Prokhorov was desperate to turn the team into a winning one and expected a championship within 5 years of his purchase of the team. That was the mandate to Billy King. Get players that can win now, no matter the cost, and ideally put together an intriguing team in time for the opening of the Barclays Center at the beginning of the 2012-13 season. Okay, now back to where we were. As the 2010-11 season progressed, a good amount of the league was consumed by the constant trade rumors surrounding Nuggets star Carmelo Anthony. He had reportedly shown little interest in accepting a contract extension and was on the trade block, with the Nets as a possible destination. There were times when it seemed like the team was close to a deal involving draft picks and the newly selected Favors, but instead they turned around and struck a deal for another disgruntled star, Deron Williams. He had an outstanding start to his career with the Jazz, but had grown unhappy in Utah, and although he held a player option to become a free agent in the summer of 2012, the Nets were confident enough that they could re-sign him that they traded away not only Favors, but also guard Devin Harris and 2 first-round picks. With Williams on the roster post-All-Star break, the team managed to double their win total all the way to 24 that season. Comical, I know, but it was at least a representation of progress towards a better roster moving forward. At this point, I was pretty excited about the Nets' chances of actually being decent in the following 2011-12 season. Williams looked to be primed for a great year, and along with Brook Lopez, I figured they'd have enough offense to at least be respectable. But the big man broke his foot in the preseason and missed all but 5 games that year. To put it further into perspective how big the drop-off was, from the team's top 2 players to the rest of the roster, the second leading scorer on the team that year behind Williams, that appeared in more than 50 games, was Kris Humphries. The team ended with a 22-44 record in that lockout-shortened season, and the best thing to come out of that year as a Nets fan was that it brought Gerald Green back into the league. And although that was awesome and exciting, it wasn't really what I was hoping for going into that season. But before that season was over in March of 2012 was when Billy King really began to settle into the habit that came to define his run as GM of the Nets, trading away future first-round draft picks. He made a deal with Portland for Gerald Wallace at the trade deadline that year, for Mehmet Okur, Sean Williams, and the Nets' top 3 protected 2012 first-round pick. This was a team making a deal for a guy that was an all-star in 2010, sure, and a solid player, but had really struggled with injuries in recent years, and they were giving up their first-round pick for that offseason when they had a 15-29 record at the time of the deal. In the 2012 offseason, King established the second hallmark of his tenure with the Nets: big spending. He re-signed Wallace for 4 years and $40 million. Oh yeah, not only did they give away a lottery pick for an oft-injured player, but also one with an expiring contract. Brought back Williams on a 5-year $98 million max deal, re-signed Lopez to a 4-year $61 million contract, and Humphries to a 2-year $24 million deal. But he wasn't done in his desperate attempt to put a semi-decent team on the floor for the team's first year in Brooklyn. They were once again rumored to be close to trading for a big name, and this time the target was Dwight Howard. But that never materialized, and they ended up trading for Joe Johnson and the $89 million remaining on his 4-year contract to provide Williams with a competent backcourt partner. If you're counting at home, those moves add up to over $250 million in salary over the lifetime of those deals. And there they were, the 2012-13 Brooklyn Nets, armed with the second highest payroll in the league. And the season actually started out really well, with an 11-4 record in November, only to be followed by the team losing 10 of 13 in December, leading to head coach Avery Johnson being fired 2 days after Christmas. PJ Carlesimo took over on an interim basis and led the team to a 49-33 record, their second best in franchise history in their time in the NBA, before falling to the Chicago Bulls in the first round of the playoffs. After experiencing such relative success, the team was desperate to put it all together the following season, and King went out and made the move that was the nail in the coffin of the future of the franchise for years to follow. The Nets traded some players along with their 2014, 2016, and 2018 first-round picks, all of which were unprotected, plus the right to swap picks in 2017 to the Boston Celtics for Kevin Garnett, Paul Pierce, and Jason Terry, among other assets. I made a point earlier to say that the team was desperate, and it was clear that the Celtics knew it. Listen to the co-owner of the Celtics detail conversations he had with Celtics GM Danny Ainge during the negotiations with the Nets on the Bill Simmons podcast a few months ago.
As I recall, and Danny may remember slightly differently, but as I recall, he came to me with that deal on draft day and said, we're going to get 2 first-round picks from Brooklyn for these guys and take on some contracts. And I said, okay, are they unprotected? And he said, yes, in fact, they are. I said, great. I said, let's go get a 3rd pick. And he goes, oh, but all right, I'll ask, And he's not afraid to ask. He wasn't pushing back, but he went and asked, and he said, unbelievable. We got a 3rd pick. This is great. And I said, great, go get a 4th pick. We're going to keep going. I think these guys have deal fever. We're going to keep going until they say no.
But hey, who cares about future first-round picks, right? The Nets are good now. All jokes aside, the NBA community as a whole was cautiously optimistic about the Nets' new roster under first-year head coach Jason Kidd. Unfortunately for the Nets and their league-high $102 million payroll, things just never really got going that season. The older guys were in and out of the lineup, Williams never really looked healthy and had a bad year, and the team's reward for giving up all those picks and spending all that money was a 44-38 season and a second-round playoff loss to the Miami Heat. And after that, it was pretty much over. Kidd was coaching the Bucks the following year, Pierce signed with the Wizards, Terry was traded to the Rockets in September, Garnett was traded to the Timberwolves in February, and Williams never regained form before being bought out and playing for the Mavericks in 2015. They only won 38 games in the following 2014-15 season and barely made the playoffs before losing in the first round to the Hawks, and in the 2015-16 season, they won just 21 games, leading to King being replaced mid-season as the GM of the Nets. In the end, his tenure featured trading away 11 total first-round picks, 4 different head coaches in 5.5 years, and what was at the time a league record in luxury tax and payroll spending. Not only that, but he orchestrated 2 of the worst trades in league history, one of which is arguably the worst trade the NBA has ever seen. The pick involved in the Gerald Wallace trade became the 6th overall and was conveyed to Portland, who it used to select Damian Lillard. The picks and pick swaps in the Garnett and Pierce trade with Boston became James Young, Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, and Colin Sexton. In doing so, he created what was considered to be an untouchable situation in Brooklyn. The team had little talent on the roster and basically none of their own draft picks to make up for it, leading to a team that hasn't won 30 games in a single season since that 38-win 2014-15 team. King's replacement Sean Marks and new head coach Kenny Atkinson have done a great job of moving the team in the right direction over the past few years, and have now officially paid off the last of their debts to the Celtics and have the rights to all of their future first-round picks moving forward. But no GM in league history has ever ruined the future of a franchise the way King did. Not only did he trade lightly protected first-round picks when the team was bad, but he traded away unprotected first-round picks for aging players in an effort to help them take the next step, and it cost the team for years. No matter which way you look at it, whether you're a Nets fan like me or you're not, Billy King, when you combine all of the payroll and all of the luxury taxes, all of the bad trades, all the bad free agency moves, he has to be considered one of, if not the worst GMs in NBA history.